Hey guys, Mustached here to review The Crow. Now, I've seen trailers for this, and of course, it is a remake of, well, The Crow. And from what I can remember of at least the original movie, if I'm not familiar, this was the infamous movie in terms of production where the main actor passed away and then they had to replace him due to a real gunshot being used. I think that was this, or the original Crow. Um, and in rewatching that movie, there are definitely things that I respect about it, and things that I think can even be improved upon an original. So, I do think a remake does seem a little bit promising. And now, I've seen a bunch of people say that this is the worst movie of the year. I don't know if this outdoes the stupidity of Deadpool and Wolverine for me. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'll say this movie has issues, and again, after seeing the remake, I can definitely see where this movie can improve in other areas. But let us actually just dive in and talk about what happens in the movie and talk about it as objectively as possible. So the movie opens up with a pretty unnecessary opening sequence where we see this kid see this dying horse, and we see and hear narration talking about how dying would make you feel empty. Or, the experience of witnessing death or something along those lines. We then cut away to two individuals, one calling the other, Zadie being called, and being warned that she should leave the city. However, before she can do so, she is drugged in the process. And the other individual who called her up, being Shelley, makes it a point to try to run away as well. But, unfortunately, we are also following other stories, and there is a little bit of weird cutting that happens pretty early on, as she is put in a state where we end up seeing her in a rehabilitation area, or the Crow, or previously known as Eric. And there are some little bits of lore that are missing from the original character. For example, the original was a guitarist. Nowhere in this movie, I don't think, in this version adaptation of The Crow, is anywhere mentioned that he is a guitarist. And there are definitely certain attitudinal things I will mention as well as we move along. But for the time being, she sees the kidnappers making their way towards her, so she prompts him to leave with her. And thus, the two of them make their way to, I believe it's her place, because she knows where some stuff is. And I do think that we could have spent a little bit more time with them together, because the whole love never dies. I mean, you want to build up just how much in love they really were. And that is something that is actually also missing in the original movie. All the context we get throughout that movie are all flashbacks. We don't actually see anything prior to when he was alive, and here we have an opportunity to, and they kind of just rush through it. And with this being an origin story, I don't think that's necessarily the greatest thing to do. Also, adding on a oddity that they added on to this adaptation is that the main antagonist has powers, which is baffling, because that is not a thing that is in the original movie. They're just a bunch of criminals who just attacked them for whatever reason. And it was a really vicious attack. Among her, Shelley being raped, and him being thrown out a window at the end sequence of it. But unfortunately for these two, they are, well, before things get too out of hand, they have a moment of kissing and embracing in the sexual engagement. And he asked why he was chosen, and she claims his aura, whatever that means. And she chose him because he was quote-unquote broken. Again, I think this would have been an opportunity to take from the original and have him actually already be a guitarist here, and this is where you can be like, well, I love that you play guitar, or something, I don't know, something a little bit more. And I don't know, I think this whole rehabilitation aspect, it doesn't feel like a proper introduction to a character in terms of, it doesn't really tell us much about the character. We don't know why he's there, and we kind of know why she's there. She kind of just got placed there, kind of. But we don't really know why he's there, and the movie never really explains it, as far as I can recall. It's nowhere in my notes, so. And here, after the getting together, and after getting out of rehab, they go to, again, her place, and this is where we get a lot of cuts. We get a cut of the detectives who are on the case, and what I will say here is another interesting development in the original, in that the original Crow, he actually gets in line with one of the cops, one of the main detectives, or previous detectives on the case. And this detective withholds information knowing that this has occurred, alongside a younger girl who happens to know Eric, who knew Eric prior, and even visits him. I think these two additions in the original, them being cut is, again, another baffling decision, and not having sort of this detective buddy relationship also is very odd in terms of, like, straying away, I guess. But, and the reason I mention this, in particular for this, is because, again, we are already rushed the relationship. So I had wished, if they were going to do that, if that wasn't the focus, which, based on the poster, I mean, I don't see why you would skim over that anyway, but if you're not going to focus on that relationship, focus on the relationships that are more mutual and that can, more aid him in other ways, like the cop or detective or whatever his position was. And, one scene in the original that I will pull from is that the Crow visits the cop at his place, and, he kind of goes over, like, how he doesn't understand how he's even back, and, he lays out kind of the cards on the table simultaneously by just being there and arriving, and the cop kind of, used the marker to, because he was already a famous singer, so he had a picture of the band, so he was able to use the, the marker to trace out the similar markings and sort of see the resemblance. Here we have none of that. It's all just sort of rushed aside. And we have even more cutting to one individual. I believe her name was Regina. I cut it down. But she's like, or he, I think it's a he. He's like the main antagonist. The one that has powers. Or she, I forget. I think it's a lady playing the piano and someone's watching her. That's what it was. And then we cut to this couple near the waterways, and then we cut again a fourth time in such a short span of this, cutting back to a flashback of him playing the piano. So he does play an instrument, and then her singing, and then him suggesting that he take over, or she take over rather. And they're again these little flashbacks of her asking about if she'd join him in a jump. Although, it's more of a metaphorical question, I guess, in this instance, obviously. Then we cut to the club, and this is where Shelley is warned about what had happened to Zadie. But they are both captured in the process of this. And she, as well as him, are finally killed in quotes, with bags over their heads. And, that has had me curious, because I've seen this happen in a few movies before, and, you suck in the air of the bag. I'm curious if you can use your teeth to get out of that situation. If you're desperate enough, make holes with your teeth. I've never seen anyone try it, so I don't know if that actually would work. Anyway, weird tangent aside about how to possibly escape bag suffocation. Again, because I don't know if that would even work. I think the desperation probably would help avoid that, so I don't know. Anyway. So they're both, again, killed, and then we cut to him, quote-unquote, swimming. And he ends up in this place, an unknown place, which I'll just, for the sake of simplicity, call Limbo, I guess. I don't know. It's an in-between place. And there's one individual there to tell him that he has this opportunity to essentially get vengeance upon resurrection, and he doesn't, he thinks it's all a nightmare. He gets awakened. So he gets more tattoos, or finishing a tattoo and this is via a flashback again, I think, with him and Shelley. Finishing up the tattoo for her. But again, I don't even know what got them together. Again, the rehabilitation sequence, there's not a lot of material there for them to be a couple, which is why, again, all of this is built on something that's so fundamentally weak, or it's not propped up well enough. So one of the cops, quote-unquote, shoots him in the chest after finding him. And after being healed up, because now he has a healing ability, fights back and takes the cop down. And begins to heal because of the new fight in process with the cop. He then sees Shelley drop into the water, and now it's more of a literal thing. So he dives in and returns to Limbo. And the guy there suggests that she's gone to hell, I guess. Um, and to re-emphasize is that he needs to kill all of the people that were involved in his killing to get back at all of them. Now that that's been reinforced, he goes to hit a weapon guy that he just knows, I guess. I don't know. This does kind of seemingly come out of nowhere. He gets a gun with some bullets. We then cut to her mom's place, which then we follow her for a bit and learn that she was involved in, I guess, selling her out, question mark? It is left a little bit vague here. She sold her out for something, but I don't know what that something is. And nonetheless, we follow who I'll just call from this point moving forward the Crow. I think it's been established now that he's back. That's sort of his gimmick, and we do see a crow fly around a little bit here throughout the movie. Though I do think the way that they utilized it in the original is way more effective, as there are certain shots where we're following the bird's perspective. We're following the crow, the actual crow in this case, find the people that were the hunters now are being the hunted. And, the crow would be the one to lead him, Eric, to these people to exact his revenge. And here, he kind of just finds them on coincidence more so the first time around, and it just sort of leads to one coincidence of finding one guy, and then leads to the other two just happen to come out of the same building or near the building that they were just near. Just, moments later after the killing of the initial thing. So, that is very frustrating. I wish that would have been, definitely needed to be rearranged a lot better rather than being this inconvenience, or rather, super convenience. Nonetheless, and moving on. So, again, let me just make sure, blah blah blah. At some point, the crow goes to this club, and, to the club guy, and the one that had initially, I think they find the gun guy, the cops, and the other shady people. They kill him at some point. I forget where this happens in the movie. He happens to be in this sequence, I think, the crow, and I forget how that sequence plays out. I'm not sure if that's in my notes exactly, but I just wanted to throw that in here, just in case it's not in my notes, because it doesn't look like it is. Anyway. So, after finding some footage of her, and he goes for this long, protruded walk, and I do think you could have cut this entire sequence. It's completely unnecessary. Afterwards, he gets found, attacked, and again, this is where I'm putting my notes. The seller of the gun gets killed. And in the process of trying to fight back, he ends up getting shot, which brings him back to Limbo. And, this is a big sequence I missed. Right, because, he learns new intel about her. She was used for something or other and killed somebody or something, which led for his confusion, and his love started to wane. Thus, his abilities started to wane. So he decided instead that he would offer his soul for hers. So the crows one of them goes into him, literally, and that's when his eyes begin to go darkened, as it were. And then he makes a blood pact with the guy there, Limbo guy. So, in the real world, he doesn't happen to have this, but then he does he then finds the shader and shades the areas of his face black anyway. Thus, the crow's look is now complete. Then he goes in the process of taking down some men. Afterwards, he eventually gets a sword. You can see that sword in the poster there. And we cut to one of the individuals, Laura. She's like second in command, essentially, who calls her boss, telling him that he's on that the crow is essentially on the way. All the while, she's at this opera show, and thus he is on his way to this opera, where all of her henchmen also are. And thus commences a huge fighting sequence where the crow fights off all the people leading up to her. And I will say, for the amount of shit I have heard for people saying this movie is bad, I will say, this one segment is really good as far as an action sequence is concerned. I will say, in terms of quality, I'm gonna say it's better than the fight within Deadpool and Wolverine, where the two of them fight all the Deadpools. I'm gonna say it's better than that scene. We have very similar circumstance, too. We have a person who has a healing factor, that being the Crow. However, he's going against a bunch of people who don't have a healing factor. So while while he can still feel pain, which is something I believe is equivalent with Deadpool as well, if I'm not mistaken, or he fakes it, I'm not sure which, he definitely feels pain. And through this, we get to see a very gruesome cut-up of him going through various people to get to her. And eventually get her downed. He eventually gets to the leader, the one with the powers. I called him in my notes the Whisperer, because that's how he activates his ability. He tries to attempt to do it on the Crow, and this somehow brings them both to limbo. It's very confusing. This ending sequence sure is, as he offers the last soul, I guess, to the underworld, I guess, and then the underworld brings her back. They kiss, and only she is brought back to life as he narrates how he's not quite done, whatever that means. And that was The Crow. So, I will say, I do like that we do get to see before he died. However, big asterisk there. I think what's missing is really building that relationship. And again, through this rehabilitation segment, I just don't think that follows. I think, to keep it in line with the original, what you would have here for their meeting, to do a little bit of script writing for you guys, is that they meet at a concert, right? He's a musician, he's already playing, and he's like already eyeing her, he's already, we can already tell he's interested via the gaze of looking upon her. And, I think having the introduction reintroduction of the younger girl being there as well early on would actually make a rather nice addition. She might be a fan or something. So add those two elements at the beginning to fix this entire script. Have them again meet at a concert to allow us to know that that was what he, that established really early on that that's what he's into. He's a, guitarist in the original, so why not in the original movie, so why not just keep that in line and then, update it, because they don't even go to a concert in the original, so why not just have that be the way that they form in the new movie, right? So that's how we meet them up. They have a little chit-chat afterwards. She finds him funny, because I will tell you, the original Crow's attitude, he kind of shifts very drastically, or I guess he would shift. I don't even know his original personality. He seems like, at least when he first awakened, he was suffering, and then once that suffering is over, he kind of has this weird kind of slightly cocky attitude. I'm not sure. It almost, I would dare say it's a little Joker-esque. Not quite, but it does kind of ring in that vicinity, I guess, is a way of putting it. So that is definitely something that is missing from this version of the Crow. There doesn't seem to be much attitude or much personality about who this character really is. And with him being a guitarist, the stereotype is that they're very eccentric. I think that can all line up really well. The girl knowing him and being a fan. So she's like following in like what he's in the performance, and then they die, both of them obviously, or quote unquote die. And from that point, I would honestly cut Zadie from the movie, cut the power that the main antagonist has from the movie, cut both of those things, cut them both away from the movie. The Zadie thing is completely unnecessary. Cut her, and use that time that you spent with her to help build these two up instead. And cut any scene that has him using his powers, obviously. That adds a little additional time here for us to squeeze in new material that is much needed to help alleviate this movie from, a lot of people calling it the worst movie ever. And again, I do think a huge chunk of it does come from the beginning opening sequence. This is where you're supposed to inform your audience, who are your characters, what are their personalities, and what is your story. Those are like the three main accomplishments you usually tend to want to tackle in any given movie, or most movies. You want to try to get those down early packed, so that way you can now have established characters and you know what kind of journey they're going on. So now you can root for those characters. That's usually the way you want to do this. And again, it's not mandatory, it's just one of the easier ways to go about doing this. In terms of formatting and looking at what I have in my notes and going about, okay, what can we cut from this movie? We can cut the cutaways, the various cutaways of, the antagonist. And again, we can focus a little bit more on a detective buddy cop sequence, and the girl also, maybe she's like interested, after she finds out that he's dead, maybe she's like interested in like wanting to get into the police force. I don't know, like something that like now I'm trying to like breadcrumb, like how do you attach all four of these characters that were in the original even better as well, because that's something that is actually kind of in the original. We have the young girl talking with the cop, at least, and they talk about how, you know, she mentions or brings up, like, oh, I think I'm going crazy, or something along those lines, because, you know, she was visited by him, the crow, and so was he, and so he mentions that as well. So they both have a thing in common already. So why not add a little additional bit where, you know, after the death sequence, we see how she's become, you know, fixated on wanting to help solve this crime. So that can be her role, the young girl, and we can re-add her to the story and plot as a, you know, established character. And make the group that kills them have a large number of them in the room. I think we only see 2 of them, as far as I can tell. I mean, we do see some of them scattered about. This is something that's not really addressed in the original. We kind of know through the flashbacks throughout the movie, which is a way of doing it, because we don't have enough before sequence in the original for that to make any sense. But since we do have an opening sequence, we can actually see who these, you know, this large group is, you know, make their group a little bit more distinct in terms of how they run. Because, again, they just sort of collectively end up at this opera section, which is a great section. Again, it's the best part of the movie, but the punishment of that is that while it's a great payoff, the setup is so terrible to all of this. And that's when I'm trying to help build up to help any newcomers find their way, if, you know, you happen to be a writer. And I'm using this movie as a sort of vehicle to get us there and what happens in it. So, you know, have them fall in love, have the young girl, you know, be obsessed. I think we need to, you know, and after the falling in love, and maybe they just decided, you know, we have a little montage, let's say, after they get together. Maybe something to, like, show us a little something after. We see their initial hookup, and then we see them again, sort of a montage of them just going on dates. I don't know, something to help us build on the initial thing, and then them being or, you know, whoever is proposing to who, it doesn't really matter, to occur. And this would be the point in the sequence where I would throw in, this is where you move the segment of they both die. You know, because now we have oh, this couple is super cute, right? And they're having a nice little relationship. True love never dies. We have now built up this true love through the initial meeting. We now have a little nice montage to know, you know, there's a little bit more. And now we even know furthermore, because this is never even established in this movie, is that they were about to be wed to each other. So now we have true love. At least a much better understanding of it. What their relationship is, that is. Because I don't think just cutting to sex after really leaving rehabilitation, you know, area, that doesn't tell me anything about who these characters are, why they fell in love, and why he banged her, you know? It just doesn't feel earned at all. Rather than we are actually seeing segments of their relationship build up. Even if it's through a montage, it's better than nothing. So now that you have all that established, I would move the killing of them here. and again, killing. Now, I don't mind them, I guess, adding to the lore of the Crow. Because the whole limbo thing, that was never a thing in the original movie. So I don't mind this additive segment. Because, there needs to be a reason he comes back. I mean, that's how the original movie opens up. It's just, it's him coming back to life. Spoiler alert for a super old movie, I guess. So, yeah, having something to bridge us to understand how this works. Because he does have other abilities other than healing after, even in the original. He had the ability to heal other people. Like, there was the girl's mom, for example. She was doing some type of drug, whatever it was, and then he removed it from her. And then he was like, go back, you have a daughter, And then there's that whole bit. So, so we can keep the new segments here. And I would say, instead of going back and forth between Limbo, I would have all of it just in one segment. I think that would suffice. Maybe he's there a little bit longer, sure, but I think having a little bit of exposition here would be fine. I mean, you have a character who just, died, and yeah, you have your new mysterious figure whose name is unknown. So Mr. Unknown, for the sake of simplicity, we'll just call him Unknown, because it doesn't really matter what his name is, I guess. He is our one that can give us exposition, and he's the one who offers the Crow already. Instead of this whole, oh, she was actually someone you didn't think she was. I would get rid of all of that bullshit, because I don't think that makes much sense. It's not in the original either, as well. And it doesn't make sense with the ending, because he made a blood pact and then nothing happens to him once he does the thing he said he would do. So it's like, so what was the point of the blood pact then, right? So I would cut all of that. I would just make it one exposition explanation, so we as the audience now understand that the Crow has entered him. He gets the markings. I think that can come from the Crow. I think that's a cooler way of doing it, kind of, rather than him face painting it on. I know that happens in both versions, technically speaking. I just think that, visually speaking, that the bird flying into him and then the bird being its darkness, the Crow's darkness, into his eye frame and around in its way, is a much more visually interesting way of having it go about, and then it remaining when he awakens. That's the other segment. So, again, I would have this segment later fully explain that he needs to go and kill all the people that were involved in the killing. And then just leave it at that. Don't make some weird pact. Cut all that pact shit out. Unnecessary. And it makes their relationship baffling, and the ending even more baffling when, again, that blood pact means nothing. So all of that needs to be cut. So now we have our character. We have the Crow pretty early on, and we have little girl added, and we have detective added, or re-added, or edited back in. Because there is a cop there. He doesn't have the same role. So now we have our our 3 players, because she's, dead, at least for the time being. and he has his new mission: go and find the other people. This is where we can get all of our cool stuff. We can have the crow, him sending out the crow from his eyes, or have another new physical crow there, rather, because that's how it was. And then it flies out, and it acts as his eyes, and that can be among his abilities, is that he can sense wherever the crow is, which is kind of what I think they were attempting to allude to in the original movie. And while, whenever he gets a kill, now you have your long list of people, however many you want. And every time, the cop gets updated, and then the girl is, interested in cops, so she's, following them. So now we have our 3 players in terms of protagonist. And I think it would be a neat, callback to the original, having both of them find out separately that the crow is indeed still Eric being resurrected in that way, and their willingness to both accept it, and you can have your deeply emotional scene with the daughter, the young girl, and you can have the scene with the cop being like, I don't get it, but you're here now. And he kind of puts together that, again, the crow is the one responsible for these new killings, and he's like, he kind of gets the gist of what's happening after a few of them, have it build up so that the players are all catching up to the crow, as it were. And again, you don't have an antagonist where he has powers, but maybe we catch up on him every now and again, like in the original movie, where we're seeing what his philosophy was, what brought him to do this, and maybe some of his crew are starting to resent, or the participation of said event, so now they're freaking out one by one. His forces are diminishing. You can get a villain who in the original seems a little bit more, dare I say, even more Joker-esque, because he's talking about all this chaos and all this and anarchy. That's what he wants, apparently, in the original movie. Maybe he wanted he wanted this heavy money that this guy was making, this magician, right? He's super popular, right? You can connect the villain to the hero here, right? You have an opportunity there through, again, using the knowledge that now we're establishing here. So now I've connected every single player, unlike either adaptation, because really, I don't think any of the antagonists, they just attack this guy, Eric, and we don't really ever learn why in the original movie. And I'm like, that'd be kind of cool to see how these threads connect with each other. So now we actually have a reason why he would potentially want to initially attack, and now, the regret is settling in, and now we have a little bit more of an interesting character already, just in that alone, just having him have that attachment, and now we have this philosophy of regret, and the panic as, again, the chain is getting closer and closer to him, as it were, and the 2 others are catching up in terms of, figuring out, and then knowing, and then, you could have, fun little bits where the crow, has a bit more of that attitude as he does in the original movie. He plays it up a bit because he knows that he can heal from, now he knows after a few, battles, he can heal from pretty much anything. So have him build that up as the movie progresses, have him get more confident in that ability and attitude towards, the guy, rather than it being he just sort of it just sort of clicks. Because that's how the original seems to appear to play out, from what I watched. And I think having it slowly build up with each kill would make it a more and the struggle of each kill is what makes it more, that impact follow a lot better. The first time he sees himself heal, he's like freaked out maybe. The next time he's like, let me test it. Let this guy shoot me or something, in the arm or whatever. And he's like, okay, I'm gonna goof around next time or something. I don't know. It's a set of 3, right? Simple rule, I know, again, there's so many ways you can help build up this type of movie. And quite frankly, I think I would keep, the ending fight sequence as is, minus the villain having powers, obviously, and them going to limbo again. Just readjust it so that they fight there, or elsewhere, but have the fight leading up to him through that same sequence. I think that sequence is badass. It's really good. It really shows off his abilities, and you maybe have the cop already there. Maybe he was like, because they're caught up now, maybe the girl's with him at this point in the cop car. Maybe she has like a little cop hat on at this point. She's like, yeah, I'm on the team now. I don't know, something silly, but like heartfelt at the same time. Something to, again, keep our characters together and are moving forward. The rest of the cops are like busy dealing with other crime stuff, so it's just them here. And then we have our big assault. Keep that all the same with the exception of the villain. And then have him deal with the villain. And the adjustment, I would say, instead of him having power, is just make him a really good fighter. Because that's typically what they would do in a more action-oriented movie, which this is, by all means. Have him being able to challenge the Crow in a way, and maybe he's trying to utilize that, he's seeing that maybe he can't injure him in the typical way, so maybe he's going for more headshots eventually, thinking tactically about, like, how can you kill someone who's been killed in this way and is healing in this way, is there anything you can do to end that permanently, have that brain actually building up to that, while actually being pretty crafty in the way he's fighting leading up to that conclusion, but it's too late by the time he, is able to, like, say, get a scratch on the neck, maybe. Like, he almost got it, right? And he just barely gets, like, a scrape, and then that's when the Crow can do his final retaliation. And that's, quite frankly, where I would end the movie. Or, like, have a little final segment of the three having a little interaction, whatever that may be. And that's where I would have left it. But in terms of this movie, I think I'm gonna go with a 3 out of 10. Not the lowest score. Again, I do think that the payoff is really, really good. But again, getting there is where this movie is very punishing. So that's my review of The Crow, as well as my script editing to how to fix this movie. And if you ended up enjoying this review plus script doctoring, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. And we'll head over to my petition to help out smaller YouTubers. Just look into my PayPal where you can help support me and my channel directly, and third to my Discord server where you can join collab, shield, all that cool stuff. And until next time, everyone, bye bye.